How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm an avid herpetologist, and I haven't been around in a little bit, have I? Goodness gracious, when was the last time I uploaded? Oh, it has been a little while. Alright, well, holidays are over with, and I'm officially back into things, and it is that time again. We are at the release of another new set for the Digimon TCG here in the US. Specifically, we are looking at EX8, which is probably, without exaggeration, the most hyped up EX set we have ever gotten in the Digimon card game, for pretty good reason. There are some new archetypes that are ready to be explored, things like Nightmare Soldiers and Deep Savers. We've also got support for Legacy archetype, including Nature Spirits, of course, Gallantmon, and the one that we're going to be looking at today, one of my personal favorites, Tyrannomon. Now, for all of my Tyrannomon fans out there, I know how excited you guys have been for the support, because I have been super excited for this support. Believe it or not, Tyrannomon actually has decent enough support. This is a viable rogue strategy, not just like play at locals. Like, this is actually a really solid deck if you pilot it correctly, with cards that will actually hold their own in a competitive setting. Now, I do think this archetype still has a lot of unexplored space, which is why we're going to be doing today's deck profile. I'm going to be showing you guys some of my card choices that I know a lot of other lists have not been running, explain some of my card choices to you guys, so hopefully I can sway you to my side, and just going to show you how the deck is looking in the EX8 format. Now, on my last couple of deck profiles, I have been getting a lot of questions regarding budget alternatives. There are going to be some cards in here that are obviously going to be a little bit expensive, so I will do my best as I go through my list today to cover the cards that are going to be a little bit pricier and kind of try to give you guys some good alternatives if you're on a budget. We'll kind of explore what each of the benefits and negatives are. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it, guys, and see what we're cooking with today. Hang on just a second, guys, before we get into it. If you're interested in picking up any of the cards that you're going to see featured in today's video, you can now do so using my TCGPlayer affiliate link, which can be found in the description of all of my videos moving forward. By following the link in the description below, you'll be redirected to the TCGPlayer website, where you are free to purchase all of the cards that you were going to buy anyway, with no additional charge to you. But just by following my link, they'll know that I redirected a little bit of traffic to their website, which means I'll be making a commission off of every card that you buy. If you're looking for a way to financially support the channel, again, without spending any additional money, just remember to follow my TCGPlayer affiliate link in the description below, buy the cards you were going to buy anyways, and you'll be helping support me while getting to continue enjoying the hobbies that we all share together. Thank you all so much for your support, and with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get into our profile, starting as always with our eggs. Now, most of the Tyrannomon lists you're finding online are going to be playing 4 copies of various Coromon, and the reason for that is the intended baseline for Tyrannomon involves a lot of Agumon that specifically digivolve from Coromon for cheaper. Unfortunately, from my perspective, what that does is kind of shoehorn you into red as your base, which means you are not going to be able to benefit from different types of green rookies that I think really help to push the strategy up to the next level. We'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But in order to make sure we are able to use effectively those green rookies, I have instead opted for 4 copies of Nyaromon from EX5. Now, this Nyaromon's effect basically just gives you an extra DP buff anytime your Digimon is suspended. We want to be making sure our Digimon are suspended quite frequently, since we have a lot of when attacking effects to proc, and our boss monster Dinomon has all of his best effects, again, while he is suspended. This is basically just going to help make our bodies that 1000 DP more. There are a lot of important DP thresholds you want to be able to get over. Having Nyaromon, I think, is the best generic DP boost effect. But with that, let's go ahead and get into our rookies. I am, despite not playing Coromon, still playing 3 copies of the new Agumon from EX8, specifically the red-green version. Now, this one only digivolves for 0 over a Coromon, so we will be digivolving this for 1, but we're also using it because it has a valuable on-play, which lets us reveal our top 3, add a card with Tyrannomon or the reptile dinosaur trait to our hand, and then it also lets us add our new Tamer, Ryutaro, to our hand if we happen to find one as well, with a generic inheritable that gives us a DP buff of plus 2000 on our turn. Because this is our searcher, this is obviously going to be the rookie that we are not always going to be wanting to put in our raising area. This is the one we are most commonly going to want to be dropping from our hand, especially on the first couple of turns, so we can set up our evolution lines and prepare for our following turns. So if I have to digivolve this for 1, I honestly don't think it's the worst. On turn 1, this is a way to pass our opponent 1 memory, get a body immediately established in raising area, while also forcing them to kind of pass us back some memory so we can have a little bit more to do on our next turn. So I really don't think the Digivolve for 1 is honestly much of a detriment. There will, of course, be situations where you're going to wish you didn't have to. But I honestly think that there will also be times where you want to be able to choke your opponent and kind of get your opponent's memory to right where you want it to, and having that one Digivolution that we can do if we have to go first and we don't have, for instance, like a training in our hand, it can also be kind of nice. So 4 copies of Agumon, but he is the only Agumon that we are running. Now I really want to spend some time talking about my 2 backup rookies. Specifically, I am playing 4 copies of BT15 Tentomon and 4 copies of BT14 Palmon. We're borrowing rookies from some of the archetypes here. Now, both of these cards have effects while in play, start of main phase, that are dealing with suspension in some way, with Palmon putting a curse on one of our opponent's bodies that loses them memory when things become suspended until the end of their turn, and Tentomon just forcing anybody in play to suspend to provide a buff to himself that is going to be plus 3000 DP until the end of our opponent's turn. Both of these are very valuable, and worth noting, both of these play very well off of the new Scramble cards. Since both of these are start of main phase, and the Scramble delay effects are start of your turn, you can bring one of these out from your trash and still benefit from that start of main phase effect when your turn actually begins. Now, the reason that's so valuable is because these 2 cards play extremely well off of each other. If we have one of these in our raising area, and we delay a Scramble to bring the other one out of trash, and we promote, if our opponent, as long as they have a body in play, we can curse it with Palmon, suspend it with Tentomon, immediately gain 2 memory, and we get that buff on our Tentomon, which will help our body be a lot more aggressive and also stickier until the end of our opponent's turn. So I think both of these cards are a big benefit for the Tyrannomon strategy, so I'm honestly committing to my green base just so I can continue to make use of these 2 cards. They both also have inheritables that are relevant, where Palmon, as long as you have a green Tamer in play, will let you Digivolve for 1 cheaper once per turn, and Tentomon, on both turns if you delete something in battle, gain a memory, which, again, we've got raid effects, we're trying to be attacking into bodies with Tyrannomon, so Tentomon's effect is going to be triggering pretty frequently as well. So that's going to be my reasoning. I do think these cards are both very strong. I think they're definitely worth trying out if you have not already. They play super well, not only with each other, but with the Tyrannomon deck as a whole. So if you see these cards in practice, I think you'd actually be surprised just how powerful they are. Let's go ahead and get into our champions now. We do have our 4 copies of BT11 Tyrannomon. This Tyrannomon is the big sticking point for the Tyrannomon deck still. It does have a mandatory Digivolution cost of 3, which is not ideal, but it makes up for that with both an on-play or when Digivolving effect to drop a 3 cost or lower Tamer from your hand. Obviously, all of our Tamers are going to cost 3 or less right now, so pretty much as long as you have a Tamer in hand, you'll get to play it out. With a nice inheritable where if you have a Tamer in play on your turn, you get, again, another plus 2000 DP buff. We are going to be reaching pretty absurd amounts of DP with this deck. So Tyrannomon on top of the Tentomon, on top of the Agumon, like it all stacks. It's super nice, super aggressive. This Tyrannomon is still very much a 4 of. If you did not pick up your copies, I am sorry. At the time of filming this video, this card is actually currently sitting around $10, which is kind of crazy, but Tyrannomon hype for EX8, I guess. So I'm going to be playing 4 copies of Tyrannomon here. I'm also playing 4 copies of Tyrannomon, the new one from EX8. This Tyrannomon has a start of main phase or when Digivolving effect to give himself an identical buff to Tentomon. It gives plus 3000 until the end of our opponent's turn, but it also has a security effect to play itself out for free, which is pretty cool. This card also has that nice generic inheritable of plus 2000 DP. Again, we're going to be hitting insane DP buffs with this deck. The Digivolution cost is also 3. It does have an alternative to Digivolve off of level 3 with Reptile, so if we have our Agumon, we can Digivolve onto that for 2, but if we're in a situation where we have to Digivolve onto one of our other rookies, it is going to cost us 3. But we're also playing some cards to help mitigate that, so we'll get to those when we get to them, but we do have to make sure we're careful. Really, just this threshold is going to be the hardest part, getting from our 3s up into our 4s. Once we do that, the rest of the deck flows perfectly fine. So if you can get from 3 to 4, which we have plenty of ways to do that, I promise, super smooth. Don't worry too much about that. But next up, we do have 3 copies of Tyrannomon X Antibody. This is one of the new best cards in the deck. This card is absolutely stellar. Has Raid, which lets us obviously get into our opponent's bodies even if we can't suspend them, and a when attacking effect where if this Digimon has Tyrannomon in its name or X Antibody in the sources, you can Digivolve into something with Tyrannomon in its name or the dinosaur trait, as with the Digivolution cost reduced by 1. This card also has a really nice inheritable of Piercing, so if you are not playing the old Taiga that gives your Tyrannomon Piercing, this is another way to access that. Spoiler, I'm not, so this is going to be the only way that I can access Piercing, which again, I am fine with. I see this card pretty frequently, and we have ways to recycle it, so I'm not too worried about it. But there is something, a couple of interactions I want to make sure I mention here with this Tyrannomon X. First and foremost, if you have a Palmon in your stack and a Tyrannomon on top of it, if you Digivolve into Tyrannomon X, you will lose the inheritable to Digivolve for cheaper, since this effect is mandatory. So when you Digivolve on top of Tyrannomon with Tyrannomon X, it's going to check that if you have that Tamer in play and try to reduce the cost, which obviously is going to be 0. So do be careful with that. Just be aware of that. In all honesty, it's not like a crime. Like if you lose out on that Digivolution reduction, it's really not that big of a deal, if I'm being honest. Again, I've played plenty of games, and I've never really felt like I was missing out on a ton. We're still Digivolving for super cheap. Like, all of our lines are hyper efficient, to be honest, outside of, again, our champion Digivolutions. But Tyrannomon X does have that interaction, that kind of non-bow between Palmon and himself. So just do be aware of how that works. You will lose that Digivolution reduction if you go into X. The other important thing that I've actually started to notice is when and when not to use the raid effect. So there have actually been games where I have raided with Tyrannomon X and not thought the process all the way through, gone up into Dinomon, and popped my opponent's only body. And if you only have a single body and you have Tyrannomon X and go all the way up into your Dinomon, Dinomon's effect is mandatory to remove the body if it is suspended. Now, if it is unsuspended and you're raiding into it, not a big deal. You can just, use Tyrannomon, or you can just use Dinomon's effect to target itself. And then they don't have a suspended body to pop. But do just make sure you're careful with this. You can potentially whiff if you try to raid into something and then the body gets removed before the battle goes through. You could potentially lose all your checks. So if you're in a situation where you feel it, where you're pretty confident you're going to be outing the body and you don't want to lose out on your security checks, just swing at security. Don't worry about the raid, and then use the Digivolution effects. Just kind of go from there. Definitely a skill issue on my part, but something I wanted to mention because it's come up more than I expected it to. Rounding out our champion slots, I am playing a single copy of Arbormon, just to make sure we have that one last check. So a perfect stack in this deck is going to be like Tyrannomon X going into MetalTyrannomon, which then goes into Dinomon, which is going to be raiding into a body, ideally getting a security trash off of the MetalTyranno effect, while then getting 2 piercing checks off of Dinomon. The math on that obviously works out where you have now checked 3 of your opponent's security, and Dinomon is going to have security attack +1 already, which means you are already threatening lethal on the following turn, as long as you can provide an additional attack. Arbormon is basically just one more way to have that additional attack. Hybrid for game has been a meme in the game for many sets at this point, and I'm of the mindset that having that one hybrid that you can just kind of drop when you need to is kind of nice. And this newer Arbormon does have an on-play with Digivolving effect that does suspend shenanigans. So even outside of Hybrid for game, this card is not like completely worthless. It does have other value you'll be able to make use of. Alright, moving into level 5. Now this is definitely where things are going to get more controversial here. I'm not playing one of the cards I'm sure you guys are probably expecting, and I am playing cards you're probably not, so let's just go ahead and get into it here. Starting off, I am playing 4 copies of new MetalTyrannomon from EX8. This is my only 4 of in the ultimate slot. I don't know why lists are not playing a full 4 copies of this across the board. It is, in my opinion, the best of the level 5s you can possibly go into. Not only de-digivolving one of our opponent's Digimon, which is always helpful, but also providing bounce and tuck protection where our opponent cannot out our body unless they are trying to destroy it, which obviously synergizes super well with our desired Mega Dinomon and his Fortitude effect. Has the same inheritable we've all seen a million times at this point, where it trashes security if you delete something in battle on either turn. Machinedramon players, yep, we got our 5th copy now, but for Tyrannomon, I do think this is by far the best level 5. I am maxed out on this and none of my other 5s. I highly recommend doing the same. I've seen a lot of lists maxed out on the new MasterTyranno instead. Spoiler, I'm actually not playing any of the new MasterTyranno, and again, I will explain. The big reason, instead of the new MasterTyranno, I am actually still playing 2 copies of the old MasterTyrannomon, and hear me out. I know this is probably going to get a lot of people upset, but hear me out of my reasoning. So this deck, as I mentioned, has a lot of ways to deal with our opponent's bodies already. The thing is, if they do not present us a body to attack into, we still need a way to aggress our opponent. The new MasterTyrannomon has an effect that deletes a body in play when you digivolve into it. That's a good effect, absolutely, and it still has a nice security attack inheritable, but the old MasterTyrannomon is going to give himself security attack +1 while in play, even if our opponent doesn't have a body. Basically, we have a lot of ways to punish our opponent for giving us a body to attack into. I wanted to have ways to punish our opponent if they refuse to give us a body to attack into, so I am still playing 2 copies of MasterTyranno, so even if they hide in the raising area, we can still be aggressive, promote forward, swing, get an extra check with MasterTyranno if we are not able to go into our Dinomon. So that's really the big reason for it. I do think this card is still perfectly serviceable. I'm playing it at only 2 copies. I really don't think you need to go above that. It does have an expensive 4 cost to Digivolve without an alternative option, so it is expensive, but I do think this card is still at least worth a couple spots, and that's why. I want to be able to aggress the opponent, even if they have not provided us with a body. Next up, my last 2 level 5s, I am playing 2 copies of the promo MameTyramon. MameTyramon is a little unusual, but I do think this card is still pretty good. Has collision and blocker. Since we have some lingering DP buffs with Tentomon and Tyrannomon, this card can very consistently get up to 12k, potentially higher depending on the other things that we have going on. He has an alternates effect where if an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended once per turn, you can unsuspend this Digimon, and has that exact same effect on his inheritable. Basically, the idea is we attack in with MameTyra, we collide, hypothetically, which is going to cause him to unsuspend. If we have Tyrannomon X, we're going to be immediately getting a piercing check. Then, if they have another body, we can again swing, collide again, pierce through. Once all of that is done, we can Digivolve into our Dinomon, or, you know, the sky's pretty much the limit. But I do think this card is really nice. It is a pretty aggressive level 5. And again, we do have ways to get into this without passing turn, and without having to declare our attacks. So we're going to try to be getting the most value possible out of the alterns effect, both on the top and the bottom. We'll see what we're able to pull off with this guy, but he is super cool. Highly recommend trying him out. Now, this is going to be one of the first cards that is, like, way more expensive than some people may be trying to get. The good news is this card is very replaceable. I am playing 2 copies of this, but if you do not want to play this card or do not want to buy this card, literally just slot in some copies of the new MasterTyrannomon. It is perfectly fine. I personally think the new MasterTyrannomon is kind of iffy. It has Fortitude, which is good, deletes a body, which is good. I just want to be more aggressive with my list, but if you do not want to buy this card, literally just play copies of the new MasterTyrannomon. It's totally fine. Let's go ahead and get into our megas here. We, of course, have the star of the show, the brand new EX8 Dinomon. Dinomon is the reason that this deck is able to do the things that it can. It has not only an inherent security attack +1 effect, it also has Fortitude, meaning that if it would get destroyed and has a source, you can bring it back into play for free. Its when Digivolving effect is also an on-play, so you'll get to use it regardless, and it lets you suspend any body in play, and then delete an opponent's body with the lowest DP. But the other thing that makes Dinomon such a crazy card is his opponent's turn effect while he is suspended. So as long as this card is in play and suspended, on our opponent's turn, they can't attack unless they are choosing to attack one of our suspended Digimon. That basically just means that Dinomon is potentially a 13, 14 with our egg, potentially 17 with either of our buffs, or 20 with both of our buffs body. Dinomon is basically a massive, obnoxious wall that our opponent has to deal with. In fact, this card is actually so generically good, I've actually started seeing some lists pop up online of Galaxy Loop lists that are playing it just because there's a good generic red boss monster. You're basically forcing them to out it, and if they do, you get your Fortitude trigger, and they're probably not going to be able to out it otherwise, since we have MetalTyrannomon to give D-Digivolution protection, bounce protection, and tuck protection. He's just very sticky and very aggressive at the same time, and he is like the quintessential boss monster that helps you tie our archetype here together. Now, the only other mega that I am currently running, and again, this is going to be something you may want to find a substitute for, is a single copy of MedievalGallantmon. This Medieval is just absolutely crazy. If you do not want, again, to shell out for the brand new secret rare, I do completely understand. The good news is there are a ton, and I do mean a ton, of alternative boss monsters you can play in your level 6 slots. Some of my personal favorites are going to be Mega Gargomon Ace, Tyrannomon Ace, and the BT11 Tyrannomon. All of these cards are still very serviceable. All of them are perfectly fine if you would rather not shell out for the secret rare, but if you have a copy of Medieval Gallant, you should probably be playing it in this deck. This card is just very, very solid. Again, it synergizes really well with everything, promoting a Palmon out of the raising area, providing the curse, and then using it to drop MedievalGallantmon, let you plan from your hand for only 5 memory. It's just crazy. Like, this card is actually bonkers. So play it if you got it. If not, you've got alternatives. But I am going to be playing my single copy of Medieval Gallant, and there hasn't been a single game where I haven't loved seeing it. It's so, so strong. All right, moving into Tamers with another controversial take. My Tamer suit is going to be 3 copies of the new Ryutaro, and I am playing 4 copies of BT11 Taiga. Once again, hear me out. Pretty much every list I see online is playing 4 copies of Ryutaro, and some number of other Tamers, whether it's BT2 Mimi, BT11 Taiga, or BT2 Taiga. They're playing some combination thereof, but pretty much every one of them I'm seeing is playing a full 4 copies of Ryutaro. Now, Ryutaro is a very good Tamer. He's definitely worth running at no less than 3 copies. You want to be seeing him, but I don't know. Like, I think this card, like I said, it's very good. It gains you a memory, and those can stack, but beyond that, like, do you really need a full 4 copies? Like, you're only going to realistically be able to use 2 on a single attack, and that's going to be going from your 4 to 5 to 6. But Tyrannomon X is already an extra effect that does that for you. So Tyrannomon X and a copy of Ryutaro will already get you to Mega, and you're not really gaining any other use out of your other Ryutaros that you have in play at that point. So, like, having 2 in play is great if you don't have X, but if you do have X, you only need 1 of these. Like, you get max value out of just 1. So I don't know. I think he's kind of a trap in that regard. I think he's, like I said, he's good. He's definitely good. Don't play less than 3, but I'm only playing 3 because I just feel like I don't need a full field of him, you know? By contrast, BT11 Taiga is still a fantastic and, in my opinion, very undervalued Tamer. His effect to give all of your Digimon DP buffs on your turn makes this deck way scarier than I think a lot of people realize. Like, that's going to bring your new EX8 Tyrannomon up to 9,000 DP minimum, 10,000 with our Nyaromons. Like, it's just really solid. And unlike Ryutaro, anytime we Digivolve into a 5 or 6, no matter how it's happening, we can use this effect to reduce the cost further. Like, these do stack and can be used on multiple Digivolutions. In fact, it actually combos well with Ryutaro. If we attack, we use Ryutaro to Digivolve for 1 cheaper. We can also use 1 or 2 of our Taigas to further reduce that Digivolution cost. So this card, I just think, is a lot more flexible, and I think it's something that you're just going to be happy to see way more often than I think people are giving him credit for. So this is my Tamer suit. I am not playing any setters. I just don't feel like I've needed them in the games that I've played. This deck is already absurdly memory efficient. So 3 copies of Ryutaro, 4 copies of Taiga. Those are my reasons. You guys are free to disagree. I have really enjoyed these ratios, though, so that's why these are going to be where they are. Rounding the deck out, we do have a couple of option cards. Specifically, I am playing 3 copies of Agility Training and 3 copies of Green Scramble. Training probably is pretty self-explanatory, where it's going to obviously be a consistency tool that will help us find our Taigas, as well as any of the Digimon in our deck. Helping us find specific pieces is always a good thing, but this is also going to, of course, help us go from our rookies into our champions without passing the turn. Promote one of our rookies, get one of those super valuable start of main phase effects, and then go into one of our champions for only a single memory, before continuing on with our combo turns with our Ryutaros, our Taigas, our Tyrannomon X's, and we just basically just go aggro from there. Green Scramble is pretty much the exact same story, where we're guaranteeing that we will Digivolve from rookie to champion for only 2 memory, because all of these Digivolution costs are going to be 3 or less. So for 2 memory, we can drop our Scramble, guarantee that we Digivolve for that 2 memory, and again, that basically just unlocks the gate, where now we are at our level 4 level, and all of our combo plays have officially been opened up to us. But as I mentioned, the Green Scramble is also really convenient because it not only will let you recycle your valuable cards, whether that be Tyrannomon X, Medieval Gallant, like really whatever you need to, it also lets us play out our high-value rookie Digimon and still make use of those effects at the start of the turn. Dropping a Palmon from your trash and applying that curse right away is really valuable, whether it be a defensive play to choke our opponent like a pseudo ice wall, or allow us to extend our plays by digivolving into MetalTyrannomon, suspending their body to reduce the cost. You can kind of see where this is going, right? Like, there's a lot of different interactions and cool things you can do with Green Scramble in this list. I am only playing the 3 copies of Scramble because this is not a turn 1 card, obviously. This is something we're going to want to be doing on follow-up turns, but once we have hit that turn 2 and we're able to promote our body and kind of get our gears rolling a little bit, Green Scramble is phenomenal. Excellent card, definitely worth using, and obviously in a worst case scenario, even if you don't have our high-value rookies, checking this in security or delaying it to play our Agumon to find a potential body off the top, it's still nice. We have a Searcher we can abuse with it too, so... Anyways, that is going to about do it. This is my Tyrannomon list. I realize this is not a very traditional Tyrannomon list, but if you try this list out, I think you will honestly be surprised just how powerful some of these interactions can be. This is a deck that can absolutely take on some of the top tier decks of the format, including Gallantmon, as long as you see the right pieces and know how to play around the proper interactions correctly. If you guys have any questions or need to know about any different alternatives that I didn't already talk about, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. The two big things that you're going to be wanting to replace are probably MameTyra and Medieval Gallant. If you are looking for alternatives to Tyrannomon X, just don't play this deck. You're going to want to have at least 3 copies, potentially even 4 of Tyranno X. I'm only playing 3 because I can recycle them off of the green scrambles, but this is a valuable card you are going to want. You don't play Tyrannomon if you can't get Tyrannomon X. That's pretty much where I'm just going to leave that. But anywho, like I said, leave them in the comments below. If you have any questions or have any tips, feel free to let me know. With that, I have been an avid herpetologist. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.